I really personally don't consider myself an artist. I consider myself a designer that uses art to communicate my ideas. I actually have much more respect for artists. Artists really has to be comfortable revealing themselves to the world through their art. We as designers just provide a solution and we use art to communicate how that's going to be solved. We never really are exposing ourselves to the world.
Have you ever thought about how you design a toothbrush or a table or even a pair of shoes? It almost sounds too simple, right? I mean, toothbrush goes in your mouth and you scrub. A table, it's got some legs. Shoes go over your feet and maybe some laces. Or what about the pinnacle of all design projects, an automobile? Well, if you can design a toothbrush by taking into account your user, having some empathy for that user, and a good sense of aesthetics, then you can have the illustrious title of an industrial designer. A career that, to be honest, is probably one of the coolest design-related careers out there. I'm your host, Bobby Brill, and in this episode of Creative Mind, I talk with Antonio Borja, a former creative designer at General Motors, a former student here at the Academy of Art University, and now, of course, the director of the School of Industrial Design. And after, of course, we hear about his origin story, we dive deep into what type of thinking goes on in the head of an industrial designer. And in many of the past podcast episodes, we have seen where you start out in life is not always where you end up. And Antonio's path from Mexico to Detroit is a great story, so please do stick around. But a few things before we get into it. Please check out our new Facebook page at, of course, facebook.com/creativemindpodcast, where we will be bringing you more videos, images, and talks with all of our past and future guests, including a great 6-part documentary series that follows a semester-long collaboration with the School of Industrial Design and Subaru. So check that out as well. And as always, please hit subscribe on whatever device you're listening to so you never miss an episode of Creative Mind. Now, here's Antonio Borja. How does your story start going from Mexico to the U.S.? What was that like for you as a kid?
I was fortunate. We grew up in a ranch, and our family also had a banana and a mango plantation. So we're from the very tropical region in Mexico. So, as a kid, you can find me running around amongst the cows. You can find my Doberman with me at my side, my parrot on my shoulder. So basically, yeah. So, I got into, I would say I got into a lot of trouble because I was very curious about everything pretty much.
But what a place to get in trouble to. That's awesome.
To give you an example, we had the canals that'd be on the hillside for water for the banana plantations and the mango plantations. We're kids, so water slide, right?
Oh, of course.
Jump on there. Parents weren't too happy about it, but, for us and my cousins, that was fun. We were able to, again, pretty much explore nature and there wasn't really anything to stop us. My dog was my guardian pretty much, but obviously I had to let my mom know where I was at. But I would say that freedom to roam is what kind of lent it towards my natural curiosity towards things, because it's like, okay, I wonder what's over there. Like, what makes this work? Or like, how does this come together? And so, like I said, I think I was really fortunate in that. And then, my father and my mom both immigrated, and I immigrated with them as well to LA. And once I was in LA, I remember it was like a big culture shock for me because,
for sure.
One of the first things was like being served cold milk. And I was like, what is this about? Why is it cold? Like, it's supposed to be warm, right? And they're like, no, it's store-bought milk. And like, I remember, to this day, I still really don't like milk unless it's steamed.
It's funny. My brother-in-law is like that. He's from India, and like I was at his house, and he was pouring milk on his cereal and then put it in the microwave.
Yeah.
And he caught me looking, and he goes, I didn't grow up on cold milk. It's weird.
So so that was one of those things where it was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, obviously, I get introduced to a whole different lifestyle in the sense that, there's cars that are around me, where before there's horses and cows. And we had cars as well too, but it wasn't.
But LA is a concrete jungle.
Exactly. It wasn't.
Where in LA where did you start?
When we first moved, we lived pretty much in South Central LA.
Okay.
I went to school in Wattsworth Elementary School, which is right off of MLK.
Yeah, right by the Watts Towers there.
Yeah. Okay. So it was, as a kid, we we had a lot of fun. I remember one of the classes, one of my favorite classes that we had is where, basically back then in the LA district, I think everyone got an IQ test. And that's what allowed you to get placed in whatever classes you were going to be in. And so it was cool. We got to get placed in a class where we were like one of the only classes that had all Macs.
Oh, wow.
So we had a Mac lab, and we'd play around on our Macs. And then that was the first time I got introduced to electronics and how to like make your own devices pretty much. And we had to make
This is at LAUSD?
Yeah.
This is regular LA public school? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically we had a bunch of radio kits and, you had to wind.
The little crystal kits.
Correct. Yeah. And we're over there, hooking it up to the fence, trying to boost the signal as well too, with our antenna. And so, yeah, I mean, like, I think when I moved here and I got exposed to that, I mean, it definitely, curiosity was already there, but this just kind of like took it to another level. I mean, every toy that I got, it was like I would play with it for about 5-10 minutes. And then my curiosity got the best of me. It's like, okay, how does this thing really work? And that's where I would start taking things apart. And luckily, I was able to put most of them back together and get them to work again, which is why, at first, my mom would always say, like, why are you breaking all the toys we buy? I'm like, I'm not breaking them. I'm just trying to find out how it works, Or like,
what was the reason for moving from Mexico and then into South Central LA?
Basically, my dad wanted us to live in the States.
Okay.
My mom, all her family is in Mexico. Most of them are still in Mexico, but we do have a few aunts and uncles. Yeah, it's still part of the family. Oh, wow. Yeah. And again, it's now, part of our extended cousins since they're the ones that are down there and they still run the land. And they also have a plastics company in Mexico City as well.
Oh, okay.
So that was another thing that kind of introduced me to like making things, Yeah. It's like the family business was to make plastic goods. And so that's something that, I was around that.
So you were prototyping long before you knew you were prototyping.
Correct, pretty much. Yeah, I didn't know it. Yeah, so for me, like I said, it was one of those things where, my dad's like, there's just going to be better opportunities for my son to grow up in the States. And
how was that? Because I know Watts has its own vision of what people think Watts is like. How was it growing up in Watts? I mean, it's a little rough and tumble.
It was. I mean, I was there until pretty much the end of 4th grade. I was fortunate in the sense that I made friends with everyone. Mm-hmm. So I really didn't, I had, you definitely had like the gangs and all that stuff going on. But my dad did a good job. I mean, his business took off. He's always been an entrepreneur. His business started taking off and we moved to Glendale, within a year and a half.
Okay.
And so then things got better, but still, you still have both sides. But for me, I just learned from an early age, like, I'm not going to associate myself with, being part of one group or another group. I'm myself. And then, people who like to succeed and like what I do are going to come around me, and I'm going to go around people that I, want to be like as well, too. So I quickly learned how to, like, create a nice little social network around myself of a group of friends that I knew had ambitions to be more than what they were currently.
Were they doing some of the design or some of the same curiosity bent that you had as a kid?
Yeah, I think the majority of them were really creative kids. I mean, I think kids are just naturally inquisitive, right? Of looking at things and trying to understand how things work. I know for me, art was something that was really big, just because we had like pottery classes, we would always be painting and whatnot. Quite frankly, I wasn't very good at it because for me, I was, my mom's focus was more, you're going to be really good at math, you're going to be really good at physics, things are going to work out, right?
That's all you need in life.
Exactly.
You'll be good.
I'll be good. And so art for me was just more always like an outlet, like just a creative outlet. Like, this is a lot of fun, I never really saw it as work or homework per se. Okay. I just did it because I want to create this cool thing. So I need all these things and I just make it happen. Where for like homework, like math and physics and, biology and all that stuff, it was like, okay, this is just homework. I need to get good at it. Luckily, math, I was something that it was just natural. I mean, all our family, one of my cousins is a mathematician. So it just made sense to me. It was just
in
logical.
The DNA.
Yeah, and It was just like where everyone else would struggle with it. I'm like, why are they having so much wrong with this? It's just logical. It's this and this. Variables, guys, solve for them. So you'll be good. But, it was nothing that ever interested me. But I think a lot of my counselors would see that. And that was one of the main reasons why initially when I was in high school and then starting to transition into like looking, what am I going to do? What is there for me to do? Like, I love tinkering with stuff. I like art. But most of them would look at my grades and say, like, you can be an engineer. My mom would make me take summer classes at Los Medanos Community College. This is when we moved up to the Bay Area here to Pittsburgh. And so I would take math classes in the summer to get ahead.
Oh, man.
So, as a sophomore, I was taking calculus.
So she was really, really pushing you.
Yeah, I mean, she just said, this is where you're going to be, like, this is what the family's good at, pretty much. And so, for me, it was, I was going to go down that path of being an engineer, mechanical engineering. Typically, anytime you tell anyone that, hey, I like cars or I like making things, like, oh, you're going to be a mechanical engineer.
That's it.
And so, so that was really the big push there in the sense that, I think, again, at an early age, I was really exposed to a lot of these classes where we had to make things ourselves. And I really have a lot of, good memories looking back at that time because, we would work together as a team to get our radios to work or to get our little, trinkets of whatever we were making, little solar panels. I think on one of them we were making like little simple solar panel or solar powered cars.
Oh my God! So like, you were really, you were doing full on design, engineering.
And it was just, but again, for kids, you don't really think of it as that. It's just you're making a thing. You're making it move. And so basically, getting exposed to that, I think it's what would really open up my mind to saying like, hey, this actually can be something that I would want to do, and it doesn't feel like work.
Was there a car culture thing going on, or was that LA, something for you?
Yeah, in LA, and even when I was in the ranch, my mom would always tell me, it was like every time any of my uncles came to visit or any of my aunts would come to visit, they would always know to bring little Toñito, which is what they call me affectionately, a car. They would always bring me a car model.
Okay.
And because they knew that that's what I loved. So, even though, like I said, I was surrounded by horses and all these animals in the ranch, I was always exposed to cars and it was something that that's what I love to play with.
What was the car? What was your favorite model car? What was the one you?
I think when I was a kid, the one that I remember the most is a yellow C4 Corvette that I got. Okay. It was a remote control one, and it was just like I was over the moon because it had the pop-up lights.
Oh, wow.
So it was something that I was just like, I was completely smitten when I got it, and I was like.
When you graduated high school then, what was the goal? So your mom's telling you, okay, you're going to be a mechanical engineer. You're thinking mechanical engineer.
Well, not only my mom, I think it was also counselors, because a lot of counselors don't really know a lot about art and design. It's always seen as like a auxiliary field that it just exists, but no one really knows what happens. Upon graduating, I enrolled in DVC. My cousin did as well. He went to Cal Poly, mathematician.
What's DVC?
Diablo Valley College.
Okay.
This is in Pleasant Hill. And basically, so I enrolled in junior college, try to get all my 2-year classes out of the way, all the general ed stuff out of the way. I met with the counselors there too and their advisors, and I would tell them like, I want to design cars. That's what I want to do for a living. It's like, okay, you're going to be a mechanical engineer. That's what they do. It's like, all right, great. That's made sense.
That's the
but
only
then I'm
option
in drafting classes, and I'm like, I don't want to draft anything for like hours on end. Like this is boring to me. This is repetitive work. Nothing against people that draft. It just wasn't your thing. My passion. Yeah, I was more into like I want to create and define what the vehicle is going to do, how it's going to look, how it's going to function. But again, I had no clue that there was a field. And then I actually happened to run across a brochure of industrial design. And that's where I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be an industrial designer. I want to be a car designer.
Because industrial design, I've worked tangentially with you in your department for a couple of years now. And every time you see somebody doing industrial design, it's like, your head explodes. It's like, oh, this is everything. Yeah. This is literally every skill set an artist can have. It's all the math, all the design, all of the pretty, all of the functionality, all of the cool in one thing. I'm jealous when I go to industrial design because it's like, oh, they get to do massive machines and make really cool things. Yeah,
and like I said, once I realized like this field existed, there was like, okay, that's what I want to do. And I, quickly asked my advisors, like, okay, what are some of the industrial design programs around here? And, they mentioned San Jose State, Art Center, Academy of Art. And my mom really just wanted, and I also really just wanted to stay close to home too. So, I came to the academy. I remember I took one class because at first I wanted to see if I was going to like it. Because, it still was kind of like...
Big step.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I'm super excited about it, but I'm like, I don't want the excitement to get the best of me. I want to make sure that this is going to be right. I still remember my first class. It was, I took a development of form class, and it was just, this is where I belong.
In that development of form class, what was that light bulb moment for you?
I think that the first time that I got to see how I could design something and sketch it out, and then within the same day, make a prototype of it, and then have a functional product by the end of the day. And it was like this idea just came from something that I just sketched. It was just something here. I brought it to paper, and then I brought it to life. I thought there was something really powerful about that. It's like I'm getting to create products for people. Like, this is really cool.
This it's going straight from your head into the world in a day.
And then I get to, showcase it to my friends, my classmates and whatnot. They give me feedback on it. We make changes to it, and we make it better, and we improve it. It's like, wow, like, this is never ending fun. It's like you're going to be in the sandbox. You're going to make cool castles. You're going to tear them down and make some more new ones the next day. And it's like, it just doesn't stop, right? Because if you think about it, I mean, we design products, but as you know, perfection's still elusive. We design these great products. They're perfect for the time. But as people evolve, as time goes on, the needs and the wants become different. So things need to be redesigned. What we felt was the greatest thing, for consumer electronics, for example, what was the best phone last year is now old news within 6 months. Car design is kind of similar as well, too. The next model year or 4 years, every 4 years, usually you have a major facelift. And it's like, okay, now this car that which once seemed to be like the perfect, resemblance or the perfect personification of the brand, seemed like you couldn't top that. Now it becomes, not obsolete, but definitely it becomes a statement of what that brand was at that point in time.
What is it? The Hyundai accent or the Aztec?
That was the Pontiac Aztec.
Pontiac Aztec is the one.
So interesting story about that though, because when we're fast forwarding here, but when I joined GM, that was one of the projects I had asked about. I was like, so like what was the story behind the Pontiac Aztec? And you ask it not because you're poking fun, but you just kind of want to know.
How did that happen?
And one of the things that the designers told us is like, well, that was our first attempt at just doing everything digital and not having clay. And there's a reason why it looks great on renderings, it looks great on sketches. But when we saw it in real life, it wasn't really translating to what we saw on there. And so that's quickly, they realized like, hey, like as much as we like this new process of creating everything digitally and just printing, or not printing it out, but like, manufacturing from data, we still need the hand to touch the surface and to finesse the surfaces and to see them in one-to-one scale and make adjustments to them then. But that was one of the things that, at least that was one of the things that I was told, and it made a lot of sense. Like, okay, I can see that, because I'm like, the sketches of it were always they looked pretty good, and the concept honestly, it was quite forward of its time. I mean, the fact that it's a multi-use vehicle, I mean, this is before, crossovers were at their craze that they are today. The fact that you can, build your tent out from the back when the cargo gate was open and all that. It had a lot of really cool features of like, being able to wash out the interior and all that stuff. So a lot of really cool functional things that were in the design.
Yeah, it's funny. As I mentioned it as a laughing point, and we'll talk about that later. Subaru, I'm remembering some of that stuff from Subaru. It's like, hey, maybe that's going to be the car of the future that has these living spaces built into it and different ideas. So it's kind of
and I think again, and that's where you'll see that a lot of companies typically they're hesitant to introduce too many new variables at the same time. You can push it too far, and the public's just not ready for that. So a lot of times you have to put intermediate models or like, stepping stones, so that way you can adjust.
Educate people as
exactly.
They go. Okay.
I mean, we saw the same thing happen with the iPhone, right? The first iPhone had a bunch of skew-fisms in its design. So, your notepad looked like an actual little notepad. The timer looked like a timer. The microphone. And now it's just the the actual WAV or wave signal on the recording there. So those are things that if they would have done that right away, people would have been taken aback. Like, what is this thing? This is an alien, foreign thing.
So the Tesla truck may be the coolest thing ever in 15 years.
You know what? I mean, that was I was down in LA when it got unveiled, and that was a big discussion that we had. I mean, I think when you look at industrial design and what we teach our students to do, which is have empathy for who you're designing for. So what are their wants, what are their needs? What are going to be their nice to haves? Also have empathy for society, like what can this vehicle be and how is it going to exist around other vehicles, and how is it going to live in a day-to-day environment. The next thing is we say you have to make sure that it's also logical. It has to make sense. So you have empathy, you have logic. Those two things are what sets up your project, because empathy is, again, understanding who the user is, who is going to be designed for. The logic is making sure that the technology is there, the price points make sense, the sustainability makes sense, the products, the actual materials that you're using make sense for the application that you're trying to do. And then pretty much the next thing that sits on top of that, I'm drawing a Venn diagram here. And then what sits on top of that is aesthetics, right? So aesthetics is what comes in and makes people want it, makes people identify it with the brand. It's got to be cool, but also just, we have different brands because different people want to project, themselves in different ways. So that's one of the main reasons we have multiple brands. And, most conglomerates usually have 3 or 4 brands under their umbrella that they control, and it's for that reason. And so basically, once we have those things, where the intersection of those 3 elements intersect, that's where you're going to have your design.
You mentioned empathy, and, pretty much everyone we've talked to so far has said that same thing. Chuck Pyle talked about in his illustration career that if you're illustrating, you need to illustrate with empathy. You're telling a story that people can empathize with. We had some other designers talk about always having empathy in what they were doing. And that, to me, is not something I often think about when I'm thinking about an artist, that almost that psychological connection with people. And how important is that in industrial design when you're designing a toothbrush or a car or something like that?
I think now the way we really look at designing things is we really try to ask ourselves, okay, what's the main goal that we're trying to accomplish here? So if we do a study of a day in the life of a certain person, like this is what they do, they get up in the morning, they do X, Y, Z, then at that point, we look at this is their day today. Where are their pain points that we can remove from their life and make their lives better? Because at the end of the day, that's our goal as industrial designers, is to make life better for everyone.
Make life painless.
As painless as it can be, at least. And, as you pretty much from the point you go to bed, beds are also most of the time designed as well, to the toothbrush and to your cell phone, your computer, your sneakers. All that stuff is designed by industrial designers. Right. And so basically for us, it's like, okay, well, let's look at their lifestyle. Let's look at a day in the life of the week, of the weekend, of vacation time, of, them having a special getaway with their friends and family, right? We look at those things and we ask ourselves, what new experience can we create to make people's lives better? And that's how we're designing most products today. We don't even take into consideration really just the hardware or just the software. They're both in unison being worked on. And that's, again, you design the experience first, and then you design all the assets that are necessary to make that experience happen.
And I know we're going to talk about cars predominantly, but that is everything industrial designers.
Correct. Yeah. Because in our department, and this is kind of one of the things that we've been talking about recently, is we say industrial design and people just don't get it at first because they're like, what? You're in a factory designing stuff? Like, no.
We got a team of robots working around the clock. We just sit there and push buttons.
Yeah. And it's like, no, the only reason the word industrial is in there is because we tend to mass produce the ideas that we come up with so that they make an impact in people's lives, right? If I make a one-off and it's a wonderful thing, but I can't it's not a democratic product because I can't share it with the rest of the world. I'm going to make a change in one person's life, and that's going to be great. But if I have the opportunity to change millions of people's lives, that's going to be much more impactful. And that's where the word industrial comes from, the fact that our ideas have to be mass produced. Okay. And that's...
It's worldly thinking as opposed to fine art gallery thinking.
Correct.
Okay.
And so within our umbrella, I mean, our students can study everything from furniture design to toy design to product design. And product design can include footwear design, personal electronics, consumer electronics, medical equipment, and then we also have transportation as well. So it's a really wide gamut of areas that students can go into and make an impact on the world.
I have to say this because, again, all the time that I go over there and work with you guys and see the students, it does affect more of my decision-making process every day. Because my wife and I were shopping for a car end of last year, and I had a Chevy Cruze. Nice car. We bought it new, except it had a very massive design flaw in my thinking. It's the way I got in. I banged my shin in the same spot once a week. And immediately, I didn't care what the car was. I didn't care how much it cost. When we got a new one, I was like, if I bang my shin, I'm not getting into this car. We are getting back in our car and we're driving to another dealership. And 3 times, I won't mention the cars we didn't get, but they were all high end because we ended up getting an Audi. But all these luxury cars we got into, I was like, boom, nope, we're done. I physically am not going to enjoy this car. I just need to walk away.
Yeah. And that's the reason why we have multiple brands, because, we have yet to design the right answer for everyone. Yeah. So with that, I mean, like what I would tell you, a cool story about that is we went to the LA Auto Show this last fall, and the C8 team was there. Vlad and Tristan. Vlad did the exterior of the new Corvette, the C8, and Tristan did the interior. And that was one of the things that they had discussed about, they reinforced the center beam of that car so that ingress and egress was a lot easier, being that, most of the time, a lot of the Corvette clientele tends to be older, even though this car is designed to appeal to a younger clientele. But it's something that it was cool to see that even though in this really high-end supercar, like they're still paying attention to the human component.
The person who's actually going to be buying it, as opposed to, that user study is a little skewed, a little older, a little more mature.
That was just one thing that they did to respect their current customer. But if you look at the styling and now that it's a mid-engine and everything, they did everything else to attract younger clientele towards the brand. And I think they're going to be successful with it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. So let's go back, because we went off on a great tangent there, but you come to the academy here and you focus primarily on industrial design. Are you working on transportation, or where is your focus in industrial design at that point?
Transportation. I love cars. All I ever wanted to do was just work on cars, design cars. Quite frankly, not even work on them. I enjoy driving them more than working on them. But because I wanted them to drive... No, I mean, I changed transmissions and all that fun stuff too because I wanted it to go faster. Not necessarily because I was like, you know what, I want to get dirty this weekend and wrench on my car. It was more like, okay, what do I need to make it go fast? And this is what needs to happen. And, I ordered a custom engine from... It was Central Mustangs back then in Tehachapi, California. And yeah, I mean, Crate Motor shows up to my front yard. My mom's like, why is there a big rig parked in front of our house? So, my motor just came.
Your what?
Exactly. And so, again, it was just something that I've always enjoyed, and, going out and driving my cars and having a lot of fun with them. And so anytime I ran across into anything that I felt was going to make that experience better, I would go out and make it happen.
Walk me through, I know industrial design is a big subject to tackle, but walk me through that basic transportation path. What is it that you were learning that helped you to become a car designer after graduation?
So I think the first thing that one of my instructors said to me was like, a car is the most irrational purchase we all make as human beings. It's the second most expensive transaction for most of us behind our home. Yeah. Our home appreciates in value. Right. Our vehicles do the opposite. Yeah. So it makes no sense really, right? And like if you have a good running car, there's no really good reason to get rid of it. You know, it was quickly explained to me. It's like different cars make you feel different. And one of the things that I was really just, for me at that point, I was fortunate enough, my first car was a Mustang that was a 5-speed Fox body that I could not drive. My uncle went and drove it home for me because I didn't know how to drive it.
You couldn't drive stick?
I could not drive a stick.
Oh, no.
You know, my wife, she taught me how to drive stick. We were friends back in high school, and so she was the one that taught me how to drive my Mustang.
That's very brave of you to admit that.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I mean, an even better story is that one summer we were restoring a 1956 Buick Special. Awesome summer project for just a bunch of kids. And we got it running and everything. And then we all looked at each other because it was 3 on the tree.
Oh, whoa.
And we're like, this is awesome. We can't drive it.
Whose grandpa knows how to drive this car?
Yeah, exactly. But luckily, I mean, we were able to back it out. We got into first gear and we drove it to her house, had her jump in, and then she drove us the rest of the way.
Oh,
so it's
wow.
like,
Whoa.
we were all super proud because there's like, you know, we just spent the summer bringing this thing back to life. But
So no one's coming up on the line to your wife at all? Or if they do, they're not walking away.
So yes, that was one of the things that, you know, again, that was like my first actual car was a Mustang. And from there, it just took on, like, I love the sound of V8s. I love working on V8s. And, you know, I got a 93 Cobra, and that was awesome for me. It was a really fun car. And then I got a SN95 Cobra.
So when you were doing car restoration or working on cars in school, were you starting in sketch? Were you starting on clay? What was really your design process
So
there?
our process really involved around just doing research first, like understanding, okay, who are we designing for? Who's the target market? Who is going to purchase this vehicle? And then once we did that, then we had an understanding of the package. So our package is defined by the drivetrain, what makes the car go. It's defined by the amount of occupants we have to carry, and then also by the amount of goods we need to transport to storage. So basically, like I tell my students, the car designs itself pretty much, depending on what its function is. You know, you have something like a mid-engine Lamborghini that has a huge V12, and it has a storage for your little business attaché case and 2 people, right? And the majority of that car volume is taken up by the motor because its purpose is to go fast, right? So where you can have a cargo van where the motor is pretty small, but the cargo volume is huge.
Giant space.
Yeah. And so basically, you know, that's what we would do is we would research who are we designing for. And then from there, you know, we would optimize the components as we best saw fit, and then quickly started to design around that and trying to create beautiful forms that would appeal to people. And then, you know, the thing that we would always strive for is that there's always little nice surprises in the design that when people would, you know, interact with it, it's like, oh, wow, like this is really well thought out. Little things that make them proud of their vehicle because like we said before, it's kind of like a vehicle is still a very emotional purchase for most people. Absolutely. And it's something that they see as like, this is going to represent me when I'm not at home.
And people tend to stick to a brand. There's that loyalty and love that comes to it, and a tribal identity.
Yeah. Exactly. And so that's where I think, you know, a lot of people, when they're making that decision, they will test drive a few different vehicles. I mean, and see which one fits their personality, fits what they like to feel when they're driving inside the vehicle. And so, yeah, so basically once we got that, started doing a lot of sketching, and we'd move on to clay. Again, the beautiful thing about working with clay is that you're able to see your design in 3D, and you're able to quickly make changes to it. It's a very awesome medium because the clay we use is not like the traditional clay where you're going to fire it and it's going to turn into a hard clay. This is malleable clay. We call it tech clay, or there's also tools clay, which is from Japan. And it's a great medium because it's very easy to add. It's very easy to subtract. So it's both additive and subtractive prototyping with it by hand.
And not a lot of schools still do that. I mean, it's very much an art form in and of itself, right?
Well, I think most transportation programs still do it. But, you know, I think for us, I think both Tom and I's philosophy on that is that you're able to evaluate your design and your forms much more efficiently and effectively when you can see them and you can walk around them and you can evaluate the highlight and to see the presence of the design in real life.
They are impressive. I mean, they are super impressive to see these massive. That kid just made a car. Yeah. That's a whole car sitting there. I know where all the pieces are on this car now.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a fascinating.
Well, it's nice to see them, to peel back behind the curtain and kind of see the magic of it happening again. And that was the fun thing for me. It was like once we defined a design in clay, then we got to finish it and add details and try to make it as realistic as we could. Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that I was really fortunate is because I came to Academy, we had a bunch of really cool tools. I mean, we had 3D printers back when if you told someone we're printing something, they would look at you like, what are you talking about? Are you going to stack a bunch of paper?
You're making a car out of paper mache now? No,
exactly.
No.
So back then, we had a 3D printer, and I remember designing my wheels for my models and everything. And, most of my friends would always like, what are you like? It makes it like I'm like, all right, Star Trek, right? Or this thing called a replicator, right?
Star Trek.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, exactly. And just like you just hit print and it makes it.
17 days later.
Yeah. So yeah, so we had access to all these really cool equipment, and so like I said, it was cool because I've always loved technology too. Going back to the natural tinkering. So for me, it was also a really awesome surprise that, I'm here. We, as when we were making our clay models, we have to make our own tools, right. and so there's certain pride and craftsmanship that goes into that. And so I liked it a lot because it was like I'm working with my hands. It's just really tangible, seeing and feeling the surfaces. It's almost
organic in a weird kind of weird Blade Runner way.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I'm like designing something on the computer and then just 3D printing it. So it's like it's a dichotomy of things going on. You have like this really traditional old world craft style of prototyping something. Exactly. And then you have this very high tech, very efficient and calculated way of making something. And so what's cool now is like, you fast forward to where we're at today and, we still, I feel, every time we have guests come in, one of the best design labs that any university has. Now, our students are sketching in VR, and I think you got to see a lot of that with the Subaru project. It's like they're designing in virtual space, but they're able to experience their designs in one-to-one, where traditionally we don't get to experience our design until we've worked 4 or 5 weeks in modeling something to make it represent what our design intent is. Here, you're seeing it right away, right as you're sketching it.
And it's immersive, and it's wrapping around you, and it's
correct. You can sit inside of it. You can move it. You can park it next to an existing car, and so these are the tools. And again, at the end of the day, we tell the students these are just tools. Don't ever forget that. Come back and understand why are you doing this first, and you'll always be ahead of everyone else because you understand the reason behind what you're doing, not just I'm doing this because everyone else is doing this.
I can work in the software. That's not important. It's why is this working?
Yeah,
why are you
when
doing
to use
this?
what tool. Yeah, that's pretty much the process that I learned. And then, like I said, painting it and putting on the final details, the 3D printed hard parts and all that, and just makes you really proud. Again, something that just started out as a quick little doodle that you did on your notepad. Now is this entity that's there as a project.
What was your graduating project that you did? What was was there a thesis or what was it?
It was actually a sponsored class with Renault, which is a French car company. And I mean, it was hard because, Renault hasn't been sold in the States for a very long time. I remember them from the 80s and the late 70s. But it's a very cool brand. They've done a lot of great concept cars. And so it was definitely, for me, it was very much a passionate project in the sense that I really enjoyed the brand. I really enjoyed the project. But my portfolio had a lot of projects where I had fast-looking cars. And so Tom's challenge to me that semester was, can you do a design that is equally good-looking, but it's vertical? So basically make it upright, make it a proportion that you've never done before. And I remember I fought him on it for a while. I was like, no, it's not.
That's dumb.
No, not necessarily that's dumb. It's just more like, that's not what I want to do.
That's not fun.
But he was right. I affectionately called it the marshmallow because I painted it white and it had blue windows.
Oh man!
But it's one of the projects that I think got my foot in the industry and got me my first job. And
oh wow!
So he was, like I said, it was like
dang it, your teacher was right.
Yeah, exactly. It created a good balance in the portfolio of having projects. I had like this super truck looking thing. I had a supercar. And I actually had a few supercars. I had a crossover, but it was still very slick looking. And then this was kind of like, again, like I affectionately call it my marshmallow. And I always would say, I was always kid with Tom. It's like, this is not my design, by the way, guys. This is something I just did for Tom.
It was a request. Give the man what he wants. So where did you go then after you graduated?
Actually, my first job out of school was, I sent out a lot of portfolios, and I was fortunate to work on a quick project with Chuck Pelly, who started BMW Design Works and currently it's owned by BMW, but he was the founder of the company and he then sold it off to BMW. So great, design icon. And then Jeff Teague as well, who again was a design icon himself. And so basically we worked on a project, and I was only on the team for about 6 months, and then GM called and it's like, would you like to come and work in Detroit? So I talked with them because I had a good relationship with them. I always still saw them as my mentors. And they're
Detroit's
like, yeah. They're like, you want to be in the studio because they're like, you're learning a lot here, but like when you're in the studio, you're going to be learning so much more because you're there with the design team. We're here, we're doing a lot of design reviews, but a lot of times we're doing them remotely, or, we're working on a project where, we're doing a lot of back and forth, but a lot of times it's not, focus on this is how you develop a design from the ground up. It's kind of like, this is what we need to get done, so let's rock and roll, right?
Right, and GM, I mean, you're thinking...
And GM is just like, you're starting from the very... Well, also, when you're starting the projects, you're starting from the very beginning. So that was the fun part. It's like, you get to talk to marketing. You get to talk to, the brand managers, and they come in and they explain to you where they're taking the brand, what we're trying to accomplish with the brand. And then you design from scratch, but you're on a team, and it's cool. I mean, all the designers, usually when we start a project, we start off together and we all sketch on it. And then they pick the best designs, and then those designers get to further develop it. So that was fun. I mean, it was... Oh,
it's almost like school, but for real. It's like, all right, everyone, let's do it. Let's sketch it out, see who's got the coolest idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was, in many ways, it was... I can say it was almost easier than school, because in school, like, you have your schoolwork, but then, like, for me personally, I still had to work, to pay my schooling and whatnot. But here it's like, I got to go to work and do what I love. I mean, I literally just pinch myself, like driving in, like, wow, like this is what I'm going to be doing. I remember like the first week just getting off of work. It's like, what do I do now? I have no homework, right? So I would just go back to my apartment and continue to draw. But, it's like, wow, there's no all-nighters or anything like that. But little did I know those were to come later on.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, not by any stretch of the imagination there. But yeah, I mean, and again, that was the big difference. It was just like, it's what you're doing professionally, outside of work. I still have, I would say, a lot of great colleagues. We would go out, have fun together. As in the Midwest, indoor sports like racquetball and whatnot are really popular, because of the weather. But, we would, surprisingly, I joined a beach volleyball team. We were playing tennis. We were out there golfing as well, too. So, I mean, it was a lot of fun. But yeah, it was, like I said, it was just weird because, like, for me, any free time I had, I was always designing something. And now it's like, no, you get to design from, in the daytime. That's your day job now. Yeah. Where, again, it was a very exciting transition. But, we embraced it quickly, made a lot of good friends, still have a lot of good friends from all around the world. And that's the other thing that I love about working in a big studio like that, is that, we had people from all walks of life. I had, friends that were from Paris. I had friends from Germany. I had friends from England, from Brazil, from Mexico, from Japan, from Korea, from China.
So it's a big collaboration all the
Correct.
time.
Yeah, because, it's for a company, it's important for them to make sure that the products they're designing, they're going to reach the widest audience that they can. And it makes a lot of sense to make sure that those I would say that people from those areas of the world had a representation in the studio.
And that's not unlike what the school is now. I would say, would you say the school's famous for its collaboration projects? I mean, we've had Subaru, we've had NASA, we've had Audi, and anyone you can think of, and ones we can't even name because they're so top secret. But these collaboration projects are, they're like a dream come true for students. If they don't realize it now, they're going to realize it later. This is probably the coolest class you'll ever be a part of.
I think that's definitely a culture that we've tried to instill. I know when I was a student, Tom was the director then as well. It was something that, we never even saw it as a thing because it was just the way we operated. And now it's something that, we look back, where back then we were just collaborating with one or two departments. Now we have, I think over 5 departments collaborating on these projects. And like you said, companies seek us out because, they want to be a part of this, where we have all these different disciplines working towards one common goal.
Right, because this recent Subaru project, which, we've got the videos that are coming out, and it's just, one example that's going on. You had, the brief was to design a car for Subaru for 2030. And then it had, obviously, the industrial designers, graphic designers, fashion, and interior architecture design.
Web New Media.
And Web New Media. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
And advertising. Or you said advertising.
Advertising.
Yeah. Graphic design.
Graphic design. So those 6. So really the whole ecosystem plus. It wasn't even like car design. It was world design.
Yeah.
How do you guys go about building a project like that?
I think the first one we did was a challenge. We just did it internally. We didn't have a corporate partner for the first one, where we had this many departments. I just called the different directors and said, hey, I have this idea about doing a project like this, where it's very inclusive, it's holistic. We approach it from an experience first. And basically what I called at the time, it's going to be Post-it note magic, because you were there and you guys will see in the videos too. The first day of class is just Post-it notes everywhere, And at first, I think everyone's looking around like, what are we doing here? How is this going to work out, right? But I think the one thing that helps everyone is when they're able to step outside the classroom and kind of see that, okay, here's the outcome, here's where we're headed. But the first one, we didn't have that. So it was just kind of like, guys, here's the vision. Just trust us.
It's all going to work out.
It's all going to work out. But, it was challenging because, a lot of times, you're used to just kind of working in silos in the sense that this is my brief, this is what I need to do, and I'm going to take care of that to my very best ability. Where now it's just kind of like, well, no, everyone is pretty much on standby. It's like, first we need to figure out, what do we want to create? We can't even start I know industrial designers get frustrated because they're used to researching, but they're also used to being able to sit down and starting to, bring some ideas to life.
Right, like you said, a car's a car. It designs itself at the beginning, so leave me alone, let me do my car.
Kind of, yeah. But it's like, no, because you don't even know what type of car you need. Right? So that's where, again, just getting them to all buy into like, okay, let's go talk to people, right? At the end of the day, we're designing for people. Let's go talk to them. Let's go see what they have to say about the current situation. Let's go see what they have to say about what they wish they'd have. And let's go show them some ideas.
Yeah, for students, that's got to be mind-blowing because it's the first time they're dealing with real people.
Yeah, most of the time, again, they're used to like, we're designing a bubble, but and that's one of the things where, we always say, it's like you have to have that feedback loop. Yeah. It's like, What we like to say is designing without the feedback loop is kind of like a chef making stew, but never tasting to see where he's at with his spices and with the salt and all that.
That's a great analogy.
You're just throwing stuff in and hoping for the best, and you just keep throwing stuff in, but you never really get to see the fact that you
call it stew all
have.
you want, but if no one's going to eat it, it's just a hot mess.
So this is where we get them to get to know your people, get to know who you're designing for.
That first day of class, they've come into industrial design. They see all the machines, they see all this collaboration, all this new world. What should a student be thinking about that first day? What their path?
I think the first day, it's important to just come in with the open mind that I'm not here to just get good at one approach. I'm here to really understand what designing for people is. Again, for me, if they stick to those three tenets of having empathy, having logic, and having the right aesthetics in their designs, they're going to be successful. So the formula is fairly simple, but you also have to have the open mind to know that you're not going to know best all the time. You will build your rapport and build experience and definitely be able to provide insights that are going to be more valuable than the general public as you do more and more projects. But that comes with time. The thing that I would say is just come with the open mind, come with the attitude of I am going to work hard and I am going to be comfortable making a lot of mistakes because mistakes are going to lead to my success. And one thing that I like to tell students is never look at mistakes as being opposites to success. They're actually just the stepping stones that make success. If you think of the journey that you're going to embark on as that, like I'm here to learn, I'm here to make mistakes, I'm here to ask a lot of questions, you're going to have a very positive and successful time at the school.
I know any kind of art degree, I have an art degree myself, and it seems like a very different culmination than, say, a fine artist, where at the end of my fine art degree, I have a portfolio of paintings or a portfolio of designs or a portfolio of sculptures, where, it seems for industrial design, you have a portfolio of
solutions.
Okay, solutions.
Yeah, you have a portfolio of solutions. Okay. And that's why we always tell them, too, is like, make sure you're not answering any questions that no one's asking, because that's not industrial design. Remember, that's where the industry comes in. We're here to mass produce. We're not doing bespoke pieces.
Okay.
We're not, and again, for me, I've always said this, I really personally don't consider myself an artist. I consider myself a designer that uses art to communicate my ideas. I actually have much more respect for artists. And one of the reasons I say that is because an artist really has to be comfortable revealing themselves to the world through their art. We as designers just provide a solution, and we use art to communicate how that's going to be solved. We never really are exposing ourselves to the world. We're very logical beings, and when it's crazy because, again, dichotomy, super creative. I always call it it's like herding cats, but we're super logical in the way we approach things.
But these cats are going to be herd in a very specific, controlled way.
Correct.
Cats.
We're all going to purr together, I guess.
Well, then that sets up the very next question then is, so once a student has graduated, what are those things they need to know after they've graduated so that they're in the solutions business?
I think what's important is for them to, and again, this is something that they work on throughout their career at the academy and through school, I would say in general, organize their portfolio, showcase their thinking, how they came to different solutions. And that's a very important thing for them to prepare a marketable portfolio that's going to showcase to their employer. I can think and I have a wide gamut of ideas. I'm not just someone who's going to approach something, come up with one idea and only execute that. I'm going to ask more questions than the initial problem calls for. And I'm going to make sure that I've approached it from every way possible so that when I do give you a solution, you're comfortable knowing that that is the best solution at the time. And I always say at the time because, like I said before, as time progresses, different variables come into play, right? If I have a new material that I can use now that I couldn't use 5 years ago, I can design something much better. So for me, like when they graduate, that's what I tell them is prepare their marketable portfolio and be themselves because, they're getting into these companies, they're going and interviewing across the country and whatnot. And like I tell them, it's your work is what gets you there. The final step when companies are bringing you in to interview in person is they want to get to know you as a person, as a human being, as a team member. And that's where, for us, the collaboration classes that we do, where we put them with students from different disciplines and they have to work in teams, we think that's very valuable, because when HR comes and asks that question, how have you been part of a team and what have you contributed? Or how did you deal with a teammate that maybe wasn't contributing their fair share? Our students have real world experience with that, and they can speak to that confidently. And so, again, that's where we tell them, your work is going to speak for you. Be a good person, and that's what you're going to be able to showcase when you talk to them one-on-one. And I think because of that, our companies continue to come back and interview our students. We have portfolio days. We also have spring show and winter show. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of companies always say, we're always happy to hire your guys because they're technically sound. They have really good skill sets. But more importantly, they're really good people and they're just really good team players. Because that's the way you train them. And the warehouse, you've been to it. It's like a little family in there. Oh, yeah. And I always tell them, always help each other out. I tell the freshmen, seek out the seniors. And I tell the seniors, help out the freshmen. Because when you teach someone, you actually are learning more from that experience than the person you're teaching. And that allows you to master your craft. That's where, for me, when they graduate, I always remind them of that. And then the one thing that I always find really helpful is for them to just document their first week, first 3 months, first 6 months, and first year, and kind of just write notes to themselves on what they want to see. And this is something that I got from Tom. And I've actually implemented in the classroom too. At the end of every semester, I have all the students take out their cell phones and write a note to themselves for the first day of class for the next semester. Oh, cool. And so they talk to themselves in the future from the past, telling them this worked, continue to do this. Here's things that we need to improve on, and here's things that we maybe don't want to do moving forward.
You're industrial designing good human beings.
Correct. Oh, and that's what I always kid. But really, that's as an educator, as a design educator, that's what I really am passionate about. And I think that's what I currently do. It's like I design the future designers of the world. That's honestly what I feel like I'm doing. And so for me, the human component, as much joy as has brought me designing goods and designing products, there's a different joy when, for example, one of my students who was one of the first students that I had when I came back to the academy, then launching a vehicle at LA Auto Show. That's a very powerful feeling of knowing that, you were able to help this student find their way. And now here they are launching their own product. And again, there's something powerful about that, because that's more than just, if I design a product, it's that product that I design and that's it. It ends there. If I can help an industrial designer, whatever they make and whatever they teach now, that's exponential. I have much more impact.
That's great. That was going to be my last question to you. It's what do you wish you could design now? But I think you answered that. Is designing the best designers possible.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And luckily, like I said, we have a really good program. We have a really good platform to do it from. I'm really excited to see what we're going to be doing within the next year, within the next 5 years, within the next 10 years. I look back at where we were at 10 years ago and where we're at today, and I see the growth in our department in the sense of what we've been able to accomplish, where our students are working. And so, again, it's something that we definitely want to continue to do.
That right there is going to be some of the best advice anyone is going to give you when it comes to a career and life in art and design. And I'm truly a fanboy when it comes to the School of Industrial Design. I tell everyone, take a class there, just one, whether or not you're a full-time student, whether you're not even in college anymore, take an experience class there, because it will change your view on design. And as more and more art and design career opportunities arise, employers are always on the hunt for the next generation of talented and, of course, skilled creative professionals. At Academy of Art University, you will get those work-ready skills that employers want. You can study on-site in downtown San Francisco or, of course, anywhere in the world with our online programs. So to request any info about our 40-plus areas of study in art and design, including industrial design, automotive restoration, photography, UX design, game design, and more, please check out academyart.edu/creativemind. Thank you again for listening, and please hit that subscribe button on whatever device you're listening to so you never miss an episode of Creative Mind.